Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome, welcome, welcome. It is Tuesday. It is 3 p.m. ET, and we are so thrilled that you have found us here on Crime Time on A Mighty Blaze. I'm your host, Hank Phillippi Ryan, the USA Today bestselling author of 16 novels of suspense. My brand new book, All This Could Be Yours, which you see on the door behind me now, comes out in I guess it's about a month now, September the 9th, about a glamorous book tour and a bestselling author who goes on book tour and turns out to be the book tour from hell, is all I can say. Never a dull moment on her book tour, and I cannot wait for you to read it. As I said, it comes out September the 9th, the same day as Dan Brown's new book. So when you hear about Dan Brown's new book, and I know you will because he's a rock star, just think my friend Hank has a book out the same day called All This Could Be Yours, and I hope you will love it. But enough about my book, because today, one of the things that I love about being on Crime Time is getting to introduce you all to a fabulous new book. And you know how many books I read, you know how many books I read. And this one is absolutely spectacular. Absolute standing ovation for Danielle Valentine and the Dead Husband Cookbook. I don't want you to see too closely what that cover is because I just burst out laughing when I saw it. And I will ask Danielle about that in a minute. When I look over here, I'm looking at the comments. Hey, Margaret. Hey, Renee. Hey, Susie. Hey, Randy. Nice to see you all. Shannon Hansen is here. Welcome, welcome, welcome to you all. But as I told Danielle earlier, and Danielle is with us from New Jersey today, I neglected things that I was supposed to be doing because I could not put this book down. It is smart, it is witty, it is surprising, it is twisty, it is really, really clever, it's relatable. You could never in a million years guess, don't even try about the plot part. It's also deeply, beautifully, relatably emotional. These characters come to life on the page. They have real lives before the book. You know that they'll have real lives after the book, many of them. And it's absolutely great. I know I'm gushing. Danielle, I know I'm gushing, but this is quite a special book. Did it feel special to you to write it?
It felt hard to write. First of all, thank you, Hank, so much for having me here. I'm so excited to be here. This book is my sophomore adult novel. So like so many sophomore novels, it was very intimidating to get started. So being here with you on the finish line on Pub Day, now that it's finished, it feels a little surreal.
But I hope you took a moment to think, this is really a good book, because it really is a good book. Does it feel like that to you, if you can say so?
Oh gosh. I don't know if any book ever feels like a good book. It felt right. It felt like I got to do the thing that was in my head, which is just, if any of you at home write, just feeling like the thing that was in your head is now real is an immensely special thing. So I will say that felt really, really good to me, that it came out the way that I envisioned it.
Yes, I think that's so wise of you, because to have the feeling, which we're all very tentative about, that a book is fully realized is a very unusual circumstance. And you really hit it out of the ballpark with the Dead Husband Cookbook. We're going to talk to Danielle in about 30 seconds more, but let me remind you, welcome, welcome, welcome to Crime Time on A Mighty Blaze. A Mighty Blaze was started, as you know, about 5 years ago at the beginning of the pandemic, to keep us reading, to keep us connecting, to keep us finding maybe our new favorite book, started by Jenna Blum and Caroline Levitt, and we are still going strong, and we are so pleased to have you here today. Let me tell you quickly a little bit more about Danielle Valentine. She's the New York Times bestselling author of Two Sides to Every Murder, How to Survive Your Murder, and Delicate Condition, which was recently adapted into the 12th season of American Horror Story, starring Emma Roberts and Kim Kardashian. That's kind of a showstopper, I have to tell you. Danielle lives in a haunted house outside of New York City with her husband, daughter, and 2 cats. Her newest book is The Dead Husband Cookbook, which is very different, 2 very different titles. If you have not read this novel, run, click, click, click. You know that you absolutely need this. However, not right now, because we're going to talk to Danielle. And after the show, one of you lucky, super lucky commenters is going to win a copy of the Dead Husband Cookbook. And who are you going to be lucky? Welcome, welcome to you all. Shannon Hansen says a haunted house, and Emily is here, and Margaret is here. And Margaret says, was that the sequel to Serve Man from the Twilight Zone?
That's what I should have done.
She should have done. We can say no more, Margaret. We can absolutely say no more. But let's talk, Danielle, about this. Kathy says, I would buy the book just based on the title. Absolutely. So was that always the title?
Yeah, that's been the title from day one. It started as a joke title between me and my agent. I was like, yeah, I'm going to just call it the Dead Husband Cookbook. And we both laughed. And then it just kind of stuck. And enough people along the way really liked it that I got to keep it. So very happy about that.
It is indeed memorable, I have to say. And I'm going to give you the task of trying to explain to us very, very carefully, with no spoilers, what this book is about. I could do it, but I want to hear what you say.
Oh gosh, you're putting me on the spot because I never developed a great elevator pitch for this one. But I would say that it is about a new mother who she's an editor who made a big mistake, and she kind of gets a second chance when her childhood hero, Maria Capella, like a famous kind of Martha Stewart cookbook writer and personality, asks her to edit her new memoir. And I've been telling people when I am a little bit more casual in like at an event or something, it's basically like if you found out Martha Stewart was a cannibal, that's what the book is. And so it's Thea, as she's editing this book, begins to learn all of these secrets about Maria and her past and what happened to her husband, who has been missing for the past 30 years. And it goes in some weird directions. So yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it.
I mean, it's more like if there was gossip that Martha Stewart was a cannibal. And I think that's one of the really interesting things about this novel. And we'll talk more about the story in a minute. But I think one of the things you've captured so gorgeously in this book, and again, if you just joined us, we're talking about the Dead Husband Cookbook, brand new, out today by Danielle Valentine. Happy Pub Day, and we are so glad that she is here. I was reading something about suspense. And that's so interesting, Margaret, because it says, Publishers Weekly said suspense fans won't be able to put this down. And that's me. And this article was saying that suspense isn't about what you don't know. It's about what you do know and think could possibly happen. And isn't that so interesting? And that's exactly what you do in this book, because you set up a possibility of a thing that hovers over the whole book.
Yeah. So when I first came up with this book idea, it was, I was like talking with a friend of mine who also happens to be a horror novelist and editor about this like joke that my husband and I have. So my husband has spent the last 10 years of our relationship just writing recipes and saving them on his computer, and they're only for him. He doesn't share them with anyone. So I've always joked that if he ever, tragically passed away, I would like work my way through his recipes, kind of Julie and Julia style, like that memoir. And then I would like write a memoir about it, and it would be awesome. And my friend
all he had to do was die.
All he has to do is die. And my friend who's an editor got really excited, and she's like, no, Danielle, you have to do that now. But as we're reading the memoir halfway through, we realized that actually you killed him so that you could write this memoir. And that was the seed of what started this book. But I kept coming up against this problem, which is that in order for that to work, you would have to believe that the wife didn't actually kill her husband, which is impossible. As soon as you find missing husband, you're automatically going to go to, well, his wife must have killed him. So instead of struggling with that and trying to find like a way to make you think that somebody else did it, I decided that it would make a better story if that was the central question. If we're starting from page 1, where there are rumors that she killed him, and that really tracks throughout the entire book. And can we still get the suspense in the pages, even if that is something that those rumors were established from page 1? So it really set up a new, exciting job for me because I've written so many thrillers, and usually what I'm trying to do is hide who, the killer is, or even who rumors of the killer is. And so starting from page one and being like, well, I know you're going to suspect her, so let's just talk about it. Let's just talk about that possibility. It made the structure really fun to work on.
Yes, the let's just talk about the possibility was part of the real genius of this book, really admirable. And what happens is your main character, who is an editor who is in trouble at the publishing company, gets invited to edit this famous chef's book, Maria Capella's book. And she has to go to her house, her very rural, secluded house, to write the book. And here's where this big Gothic element comes in, which is also so gorgeous. Can you talk a little bit about that and why you took her out of the city and put her out of water into this Gothic mansion?
So I just love Gothic fiction. I studied it in college. I am obsessed with it. And I loved the idea of really having the horror come from the Gothic setting and this feeling of something being slightly unsettling and slightly not right. Particularly because my last book, Delicate Condition, which was the one that was made into the last season of American Horror Story, it was very much in your face with the horror. It's very gory. It's very body horror. And I wanted to do something that felt different. And Gothic horror is such a skill to have to develop. It really requires some fine tuning of your language and your prose. And so I wanted to do something new. And I love the Catskills. I go there every year. I'm actually going there just this weekend. I'm planning on going up to the Catskills. And so I thought, what better place to set a new modern farmhouse that feels completely out of place and to just make it as creepy and fun in all of these unexpected ways. And so I just, honestly, designing her house was probably one of the most fun parts I had in writing this book, because it was just like, okay, what would it look like if you were incredibly wealthy and lived full-time up in the Catskills? How would the house feel and look, and what would it feel like to move through it? And so I can practically design the house from memory. I suppose.
So this isn't based on a real house. This is something.
No. I looked up a bunch of modern farmhouses, and I kind of like worked through the blueprint of what it would feel like, because I wanted it to have lots of little rooms and nooks and crannies where you could kind of get lost in. And I wanted Thea to really feel unsettled as she was walking through it and get lost. Because if you've ever had that experience of being a guest in someone's home and you don't really know where things are and you get lost going from one room to another, it makes you feel very off kilter. And I think that that's a really good place to start for horror.
And the house is such a metaphor for the whole book, that Thea is lost and she's at someplace unfamiliar, and behind every door might be something scary, and she's not quite sure what doors to open and what doors are locked and why certain doors are locked. And she's lost from moment one. Even the garage is terrifying. And you do such a good job with that, because I do think that one of the things about Gothic horror is that part of it, I mean, you have a character say, sometimes a thought just gets in your head, and then that colors everything else, when really there's nothing wrong. And that's such a wonderful element of this book as well, because something could be terrible or it could be just fine. And she has to figure out which it is. Can you talk a little bit about that balance?
Yeah. So I started writing this book, I was 2 or 3 years postpartum, and it's just such a weird time, because the first couple of years of having a baby, after having a baby, you feel completely unhinged. You don't know what's real. You don't know who you are. You're struggling to kind of come back to who you are. But by the time they're 2 or 3, you've kind of gotten your footing a little bit, but things still feel off. And it's so hard to know how much of it is real, how much of it is reality, how much of it is, things that are actually happening, versus how much of it is just in your head, and you still trying to find your way back to this person who doesn't exist anymore. And that was really the place that I wanted to set Thea, is in this place of like, she's trying to be this woman, this career woman that she was before she had a child. She's trying to make her relationship with her husband the way it was before she had a kid. But that person doesn't exist anymore. She needs to find a new person. She needs to reclaim her identity in these new ways. And those are hard things to talk about. It's hard to exactly describe what's so different And so for me, because I've spent, most of my life writing novels, it's just so much easier to put that in metaphor and to make it into a house up in the Catskills and have it be just this metaphor for how she's stumbling through her life, or this, absolutely like insane situation that she has with a woman that she viewed as kind of a mother figure when she was growing up, who is now kind of strange and creepy and has these weird rumors about her. And so I just think that a lot of that seeped through in metaphor and writing it, because that was also where I was when I was writing the book. I was 2-3 years postpartum and still trying to figure out how to be the writer I was before and make these two things work at the same time.
Well, the whole thing is supremely unsettling, but you do it with such skill because so Thea goes to the Catskills to this weird house of Maria Capella, which is gorgeous. And Maria Capella is famous and she has a television show. And Thea has grown up absolutely idolizing her as a cook and pretending that she was her daughter when she was growing up. I mean, this is complete starstruckness. And she goes into this house and her job is to edit her idol's book, which Maria doles out to her chapter by chapter. That is such a great idea because we as readers are just gobbling, these chapters down and can't wait for the next one. So it's like you leaving these gold coins on the trail for us to find as Thea finds them. And she can't leave because she needs them. Talk a little bit about that, the idea of doling out those chapters and how that worked for you and why that was important.
Well, so when I first started writing this book, Maria was really the person, the character that came into my head first. She came into my head just fully realized. She was this powerhouse woman who had essentially become famous for being a mother and housewife and nurturer. That was her entire brand. So I was just thinking about how we watch these women like Martha Stewart or Ina Garten or, Julia Child, like all of these women who they just perform motherhood. They perform this nurturing role. And they do it so flawlessly that we forget that they are on a screen or in a book, that they're doing it for an audience and it's not this natural, organic thing that we're witnessing. And I just wanted a woman. I really wanted to present someone who was two things. So she's the perfect mother, but she's also a businesswoman, because we forget that these women are working mothers. They are both doing the business work of being a celebrity, of being a public figure. And they are, essentially like performing motherhood. And so I was thinking to myself, what would this woman be like? Because she has to be a businesswoman. She has to be shrewd, but she also has to be the perfect mother. And so she's doing this thing that, most women who are trying to perform this, this magic trick have realized is impossible. And yet they're doing it. And so I really spent a very long time with her and working with her, and she got in my head. And I don't usually get too woohoo with my characters where I'm like, my characters have a mind of their own and they're talking to me. But Maria really did. Like, she feels completely separate from me in a way that a lot of my characters just don't, because she has this entirely different personality. And so when I started working on her story, she just demanded to have her voice heard. So I realized very early on that I wasn't going to be able to get away with, just like some snippets of the book here and there, or just like, having Maria just be like this side character that Thea learns from. Maria wanted to be center stage from page one, to the point where even though I knew this was Thea's story and Thea was going to be my main character, Maria was like, no, honey, I'm writing the introduction. I'm opening this book. She took it out of my hands. So I wish I could say, I wish I could speak from more of a like technique place on this, but really, like, she came into my brain fully formed and just took over. And I needed her to slow down. I needed her to not just take the entire story from Thea. I needed her to share. And the only way I could figure out how to do that is if she was essentially manipulating Thea in this way, where she was like, okay, no, you just get bits and pieces of this story at a time. Because otherwise she would have taken the entire book and it would have been her book. And back little bits for Thea.
It's so funny because So many people in the comments are chatting about this. Sharon says, I just got this on my Kindle. Congratulations. Click. We love that. Run, run, run. Click, click, click for the Dead Husband Cookbook. But the thing that you do is as an author that's so skillful. And if you just joined us, we're talking about the Dead Husband Cookbook by Danielle Valentine, just out today, about an editor from New York who has to go to the Catskills to edit the book of a very famous television cook who has a lot of secrets that she may or may not reveal in the book. It is the story of Thea's journey to discover who Maria Capella really is. And we get to go on the journey as well. So, but what you do as an author that's so skillful is you're writing as Maria's book, but then you're also writing Maria in real life through Thea's eyes. And those are very different kinds of people. So talk a little bit about that juggle.
Yeah, so it's interesting because it really comes back to this idea of like, who is the person that you're interacting with on television or in a cookbook or you know, at an event? Like, who is that person versus who is she in real life? This there's, you know, I saw in the comments somebody said, you know, there's no one is a perfect mother, and that is so true. And yet you see these women, I mean, these tradwives on Instagram and TikTok, and these women who've made a career out of writing cookbooks and kind of performing domesticity, and they're really just, they're performing this idea of what that is. And I really was very interested in that, in the struggle there, in how you have to present yourself in public versus who you really are in your private life with other people, and the parasocial relationship that Thea has with her. You know, she grew up with her. She saw her as a mother figure. And so for her to have this image of this woman in her head that she interacted with for years, that she grew up with, and then to have that really just slam into the reality of who Maria actually is, I just thought that was a really interesting place to be, and a really interesting dynamic to play with. So that was one of the most fun parts of writing this book, is figuring out like, who is Thea when she is live, when she's on camera, versus who is she when she is doing a business deal, when she's working.
Maria. Who is Maria when she's on camera?
Sorry, I misspoke. Maria.
And I think that each of the women, the power of that you have when you can be one person on camera or on the page versus in real life. You have the tiniest little snippet at the end where the song Paper Moon is being played. It's a Barnum and Bailey world, just as phony as it can be. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is beautiful, because that is the whole book. I just got goosebumps saying it. That is the whole book, that you're just never quite sure what's real, and everybody is out to convince you that it's one thing. One of the things that is real, though, is that the recipes are awesome. They're gorgeously written. I was starving throughout the whole book, wanting to make every single one of them. And I thought, wow, somebody really knows about cooking. Talk a little bit about that.
So that is actually not me who knows about cooking. My husband, he is an amateur chef. He's been cooking our entire relationship. And the entire time, whenever he would come up with a recipe that he thought was very good, he would write it down and put it on his computer and just hide it away for him for the future, I guess. And I just wanted people to be able to experience them, because he is so talented. He is so incredible. And so please, if you buy this book, please do the recipes. He is just so thrilled that they're out there. This is the first thing he's ever had published. So he's very excited. But they're phenomenal. And actually the meatball recipe, I have a little story about how the chef in the book, Damien, came up with the meatball recipe by, you know, finding meatballs in the back of his grandmother's freezer after she had died. That's actually a true story. That is how my husband figured out his meatball recipe. He found the last batch of his grandmother's meatballs in the back of her freezer after she had died, and she had never written down the recipe. So he spent over a year deconstructing the meatballs, and every week he would make they call it Sunday gravy on the East Coast, which is just like a tomato sauce with meatballs and sometimes sausage or a brajol and other things in it. And he would spend every week deconstructing the meatballs to try and figure it out, until he finally did and ended up surpassing her recipe. And he's like won a bunch of awards kind of locally for how good his meatballs are. So please try them and eat them. They're phenomenal.
I wondered about that meatball recipe, and I wondered if that was something that had a history, because it sort of felt like it did. And it reminds me that we have not talked about Damien at all. We've talked about the women. So at the center of this story is Maria, the famous chef's husband, Damien, who has disappeared. And he was the one who started their famous restaurant and was the first famous chef and took all the credit for everything. And there's a real undercurrent of, why do the men get all the credit for things in the book? Can you talk a little bit about that and where that idea came from? Where did Damien?
Yeah, and it's even beyond that, because it's, why do men get all of the credit, but also when men do these things, why are they considered art or genius? So Damien is this chef. He opens a restaurant, and when he, like, as a chef, he's like heralded as this genius. And then when Maria, after he disappears in the 90s, and Maria then goes on to write some cookbooks and star in a show and essentially do the same thing but better. And yet she's this kind of domestic goddess. It's a much different idea of what she's doing. She's not performing an art. She is, doing what women are supposed to do. And it's this idea of like, what does it mean when we view what men do when they're doing the exact same thing that women are doing? Why do we view it so differently? Why are we so quick to give them praise that we wouldn't give women? And like everything else in this book, you see it really reflected in parenting. So, a woman takes her child to the park, and it's like, oh, well, it's a mother taking her kid to the park. It's what you're supposed to do. Whereas if a guy does it, it's dad of the year, like he has a parade thrown in his honor. And so that kind of continuing double standard of, women are just kind of expected to pick up all of the slack and the mental load of motherhood. Whereas, men are kind of, if they do anything, it's like they expect a gold star.
There's some really great moments when Thea's husband has to take care of their little girl. Yes. And he's like, I've been here with her all day. And Thea's like, yeah, I've been with her.
Yeah, it's called parenting.
It's really, she's so relatable. And her relatability comes through so gorgeously, as well as so beautifully, in that she in her life and Maria in her life do have these parallel maternal journeys. And that's one of the things that sort of brings them together.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think probably just because of the phase of life I was in when I was writing this, just kind of struggling to be a working mom and to take care of my kid, to, give my family 100% and to give my career 100%. And then there's nothing left for anything else. And just going on that journey of realizing that that's not possible. I think that a lot of my frustration came out in writing it. And that's why you see some of these relatable moments. My husband's great. He's great with our daughter. But there are always moments. There are always moments when you're like, really? Or like, you feed her dinner every day. You don't know, like what she wants.
We have all felt that. And that's why, I was going to say that I laughed sometimes in this book. And then I know you all are going to say, when you read it, you'll say, you laughed in this. It's really witty and it's really funny. And it's just so suspenseful. But the other thing about the book, and I don't want to leave this part out, and then we'll get to the questions in a minute or two, is that it is really a solidly written, fair murder mystery. That that all the clues are there, that we could figure it out if only we were as smart as you are. That all of and I use this term affectionately, all the necessary conventions of a murder mystery are fully realized in this book. You must have been so careful about that, because that's hard to do. All the loose ends are tied up.
Yeah. So, I've been writing for a decade now, in thriller and horror. That's really my home. So I've figured out how to do the plot part. Is the best way I can put it. That's where I feel most at home, is figuring out a really tricky plot and putting in all of the right, twists and clues so that you can figure it out. That's just where I'm happiest, is really working through that. So this book was just this was so much fun because I knew exactly what I wanted it to feel like and where I wanted people to have certain reactions. Like I knew, like, okay, I want people to think that so-and-so did whatever at this point. And then when they get to this moment, I want them to think X. And just once I'm at that level in writing, that's where you really get to play and have fun, because you can add all of these little red herrings and twists to kind of get the reader to go on the exact journey that you want them to go on. So I'm really pleased with how I was able to kind of get it together. And it is hard, but it's like a fun hard. It's like doing a really challenging crossword puzzle where you feel very satisfied at the end of it.
You got me every time, completely so. And even the time where I thought, well, wait a minute, there's one thing. And then I turn the page and somebody says, wait a minute, there's one thing. And I just burst out laughing. I thought, Danielle is such a rock star, such a genius. I love this book so deeply much. Let me say one more thing before we get to the questions. I will admit to you that if someone said, this is a horror novel, I would say, that's not really my favorite. So I didn't go into this with that knowledge, and it is horror, I guess, if you decide to call it that. But on the other hand, it isn't really. And so that tightrope that you walked of making it's either supremely ordinary or just what happens to all of us every day in every way. Mm-hmm. And when does the line get crossed into, oh my golly, I can't believe this? So you were careful about that.
Yeah. So I've written a lot of horror novels. My last adult novel, Delicate Condition, it's much more living in the just traditional horror space, where when people are like, oh, I struggle with horror, I'm like, maybe skip that one. Dead Husband, despite the really scary title, Dead Husband, I wanted to write something for all of these other incredible people I've met who have a harder time with horror, who don't quite have the stomach for it. So my husband does not like horror novels, and that's always been a struggle with us, because I make him read everything I write. And he's like, he hates horror so much. And so I really had him in mind when I was writing this, where I was like, okay, I do want there to be a feeling of eeriness, a feeling of unease, but I don't want it to be a thing where it's like, once you close the book, you can't get these images out of your head. You can't go to sleep at night. I want it to be way more fun, murder mystery, gothic setting, just like fun horror, that feeling of like, ooh, I'm a little spooky, or I'm a little spooked out, but like, I want to know what happens next. Not like, oh my God, I'm never going to forget this bone deep feeling of fear. So I'm glad I was able to walk the line. It was a little tricky. I definitely had to pull back on some of the horror moments to land in the right place, but
you did it. You did it so perfectly. I know that I just realized that you said bone deep, and I almost said you made it very palatable. And then I thought, no, don't,
easy to do the puns with this one.
Yeah, nothing's going to stop us from doing that. Congratulations on this. I just think it's a wonderful novel. It's completely suspenseful. It's completely irresistible and unique and funny and wise about the publishing world, about the world of being a mom, about the world of being an entrepreneur, about our emotions with people we love, and how we deal with love and marriage and professions and food. Absolutely. Danielle, this is completely great. Let's take some questions from the audience if you have a couple more minutes. Margaret says, how do you come up with your characters' names? Damien reminds me of The Omen, of course, and Maria seems very much the opposite theologically.
Oh, that is such a good, that is such an interesting thing to notice. That was not in my head at all. I don't have an interesting way I come up with names. I've written enough books now that it's always a struggle to come up with names I haven't used before. I know that Maria was originally in her very first inception, I wasn't thinking that she was going to be an Italian cook. I was thinking that maybe she was going to be from the Midwest like me. And I think I was calling her Brooke for a while. And when I realized I wanted to use my husband's recipes and that she would then need to be Italian, I think I just kind of wrote out a bunch of Italian, like Italian American names that felt like something I would see on a Food Network channel. Like I wanted it to have that flow of like, I would see this on the cover of a cookbook. I would see this, family dinner with Maria Capello. Like I could see that advertisement. So it was just really like a lot of trial and error until I found something that fit and that felt right. And honestly, I think most of my names kind of go through that. Like I'll try one name that I read somewhere or heard somewhere, and it does work or it doesn't work. And then I go on to a new one and I just kind of keep doing a find and replace until actually they feel correct.
Isn't that funny how when they're wrong, they just don't work?
Yeah. Yeah.
I do think Thea too means something in Greek, like truth, or, from wherever theology.
That is, I did not think about it that deeply. I wish I was that careful with my names. Alas, I think I just chose Thea because it sounded like a good, like cool, nerdy editor name.
Yeah. No, it's great, but we can pick these apart. Renee says, Danielle, are you going on a book tour besides the Catskills?
I don't actually have any events, any live events planned yet. My publishing team kind of mentioned maybe doing some stuff around Halloween, so stay tuned. I will blast it, all over social media if we end up deciding to do that. But for now, I think the end of the summer is always such a hectic time, and there are so many people who are on vacation that we all just kind of felt like, let's just do some stuff online and talk to readers that way, and we'll save the spooky season stuff for actual spooky season.
Well, the word of mouth the buzz about this is going to be amazing. I hope to start it right here on Crime Time. All of you need to pick up this marvelous book. Who else has a question? What are your challenges? What were your challenges, says Emily, writing this book?
This book was interesting. So my first adult novel, Delicate Condition, took me 3 years. And it was one of those books where I kept banging my head against the desk and I just kept rewriting it. It was so hard to get right. And I have such PTSD from that process that I was actually I think the biggest challenge with this book was honestly just getting started, because I kept thinking back to how hard that was and thinking like, I'm never going to be able to do it again. And then I got started with this one. And it's like I said earlier, Maria just started talking to me, and she was this fully formed character. She had such a presence and I just knew her. And Thea, she wasn't as much of a presence. She wasn't as fully formed as Maria, but she was likewise, I just got her voice pretty quickly. And I think that she really just represented all of the things I was afraid of with motherhood and with my career. And it just was this place for me to just put all of these fears that I had onto the page. And so once I started it was not that hard to write, which is just this magical thing that happens with the best books I've written, where all of a sudden they just kind of pour out of me and then they're there. So yeah, I don't know. Working with my husband on the recipes was maybe the hardest part, because he is a perfectionist and he took a very, very long time to write them. And I had to remind him many, many times that he needs to actually hand them in if he wants to see them in the book. And that actually might have been the hardest part.
When you read this, you'll see how funny it is what Danielle is saying about her taking her husband's recipes. That is an inside joke on the book. So this will be another incentive for you to read the Dead Husband Cookbook. We are out of time. You have been fantastic. This book is absolutely terrific. I hope you will come to Boston. Bring your husband. He can cook. That would be.
Yes. I need to bring him on all of the tour dates now. So he hates being in front of people, so he'll hate it. But I think everybody will want to meet him after this.
Well, he will get a lot of applause, and that is I cannot wait.
Well deserved.
Marvelous. Let's
Thank you so much for
spin the wheel of fun and see who wins a copy of this book. Somebody's going to be very, very lucky. And the recipes are mouthwatering. Everything I say becomes sort of creepy when Robin Stull wins a copy of the book. That's great. Robin is such a veteran of Crime Time, and we are so pleased that you've won. You know the deal, Robin. You just email me and we will get to Danielle's people who will send you your copy of the book. The rest of you, you know what to do. Run, 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 click, click, click. Get your own copy of the Dead Husband Cookbook, and then email us and let us know how you like it, because I promise you, you will think it is absolutely terrific. Danielle, standing ovation for you. This is congratulations. Let me just hold on to you for one little tiny second till I say to you all, do not move, or you have 15 minutes to come back and at 4 p.m. to come talk with Sherry LaPena, who is such a rock star. And this is her new book, which came out last week. She didn't see it coming. Another Sherry LaPena, brilliant thriller, multi point of view. You will not guess the ending, and you will be turning the pages as fast as you can. Sherry LaPena is fantastic. And next week, Samantha Downing, too old for this. I'm going to tell you what this is about, but I just want you to look at the cover. And here is a woman with gray hair wearing black gloves and a bloody hammer. That's all really you need to know. So come see us next week at 4 p.m. for Samantha Downing. Come see us today at 4 p.m. for Sherry LaPena. And we have just been talking to Danielle Valentine, whose fabulous standing ovation brand new book is out today. Danielle, thank you for coming today.
Thank you so much. It was just such a joy to be here, and you have a great audience. It was wonderful.
Yes, the Crime Time audience, you're so right, is absolutely very wonderful to see you all with such great questions. Everybody saying yay and thank you and wowza. Thank you. Susie Baldwin says thank you both for a great discussion, and thank you all for coming today. So remember, we'll see you in 15 minutes for Sherry LaPena. We will see you next Tuesday for Samantha Downing. And until then, you remember this: it is always safe inside a book.